Thank you for the invitation to talk about the work that we're doing in Latin America. So I'm Jamie. I have been working on this issue of chronic kidney disease of unknown origin, which I'll go into for the last 4 years. I do have my MPH and PhD in occupational and environmental health, and I've done a lot of work globally with the CDC and with Peace Corps in West Africa. And so I work for the Center for Health, Work and Environment, which is in the Colorado School of Public Health. And just an overview of my talk, I'm going to talk about the partnership that we have with the agribusiness down in Latin America. I'm going to give background on chronic kidney disease of unknown origin, referred to as CKDU, go into a little bit about the research we're doing, and then just give an update on additional workplace priorities that we're focusing on with the agribusiness. Just a slide on who we are. So we're the Center for Health, Work and Environment in Colorado. We are one of 6 centers of excellence for total worker health, supported by U.S. National Institute for Occupational Safety and Health. So the collaboration that we have going on, it's a partnership with Pantaleon, which is a major sugarcane producer in Latin America. They do have sugarcane mills in Guatemala, Nicaragua, and Mexico, but their headquarters is in Guatemala City, and we've had an MOU with Pantaleon since 2016. And the goal of this partnership is to apply total worker health principles to assess and improve the health, safety, and well-being of the sugarcane workers in Guatemala, and it's expanded to Nicaragua and Mexico also. And the initial focus of the partnership was to address the etiology and reducing CKDU with the workers. And we do have independent authority to analyze and publish the findings with Pantaleon through the MOU. So first, just a little bit about CKDU. CKDU is a progressive loss of kidney function. We do not know what causes CKDU at this point, and it's not linked to risk factors for the traditional form of chronic disease that you do see in developed countries. So it's not linked to diabetes or hypertension. High prevalence areas of CKDU have emerged in the last 2 decades worldwide, which include, if you look at this globe here, the main hotspots are in Latin America, Brazil, Sri Lanka, India, and now Egypt. These epidemics around the world are found mainly in hot and humid areas among poor agricultural communities. It's mainly found in male agricultural workers right now, though there's some new studies showing a higher prevalence of CKDU in communities and within adolescents. The disease is often fatal, especially in these low resource areas. There's not great access or even any access to dialysis areas. And the progression of disease is still under study. We don't know what the natural history of this disease is. If you fall behind a certain threshold, are you doomed, or can you bounce back? Can your kidneys bounce back with this new form of CKD? Currently, research suggests that the cause may be multifactorial. So there's not just one single cause, like a toxin. It's probably a combination of several things. So a little bit about the epidemiology of CKDU in Latin America. So the map on the left shows the high prevalence areas that are mainly found along the Pacific coast of Latin America. And the graph on the right shows the excess mortality rate. So I have mortality rates on the y-axis and the years on the x-axis. It's just showing how the mortality rates in Nicaragua and El Salvador in the males compare to other countries in the region and the US. It's just a shocking, it's alarming epidemic going on in Central America. Populations with high CKD prevalence include communities that are at a lower altitude, communities along the Pacific coast, and then we're finding it to be having a highest prevalence with sugarcane workers, and then some studies have shown an excess prevalence with corn workers, construction miners, fishing, shrimp farms, and brick workers, and it's mainly found among males. So research has focused on 2 main hypotheses so far for the CKDU epidemics. So there's first the occupational exposures, which have included heat stress, the areas where these workers are working. It's really hot, it's very humid. So they're having repeat heat stress, recurrent dehydration, probably repetitive acute kidney injury. So just in the day's work, maybe their kidneys are experiencing a hit and they're experiencing injury. They're probably taking non-steroidal anti-inflammatory medicine, which is bad for your kidneys if you're dehydrated. So it's a lot of painful work. And then research has also focused on environmental exposure. So nephrotoxic heavy metals that could be naturally occurring in the water, agrochemical use at home and during work, potential infectious agents, and then there could just be a bioaccumulation of chronic low exposures to these metals or agrochemicals over time. Of course, there's always individual risk factors that come into play, and then the combination of several factors. So these are the main hypotheses that have been going on the last 10 years. So here's, I'm going to go into the research that we're doing now with sugarcane workers in Guatemala. So just a little bit of background on sugarcane work. It's a 6-month season in Guatemala. The company that we work with, Pantaleon, they hire 4,000 field workers every year to work the 6-month season. So it starts in November, goes for 6 months until May. And they do hire local workers that just commute via bus every day. So they go to the field at 5 a.m. and then when they're done with work around 7 p.m., they bus home. And then there are highland workers that come from the highland region and they come down for the entire 6-month season and they stay in dormitories. And then with field workers, there are the cane cutters, and they're the ones with out there with the machetes cutting the cane every day. And then there's production workers, and they're actually seeding all the sugar cane. So they cut it into pieces and they seed it. So those are the two main type of field workers. So with the cane cutters, as you can imagine, it's heavy exertion, long work hours, intense sunlight and heat. They're using the machetes, and they're out there for 10 hours a day in this heat. And they're paid by the amount of cane they cut. So on average, these workers are cutting 6 tons of sugar cane a day, which is just amazing to me. So it's a lot of intense work for 6 months straight. Some of the field practice that Pantaleon does, so they do pre-employment health screenings, and they do a physical exam, and they also check your kidney function. And so if you do not have normal kidney function, they will not hire you. And they do have water, rest, and shade guidelines in place. So they want their workers to be drinking at least 2.5 liters of electrolyte solution a day, and then at least 16 liters of water. And they do have breaks. And as you can see on the pictures here, there's the water tank that's out in the field. And then here with the bus, so this is the bus that's commuting the workers, and they do put up a shade, a little bit of shade for the workers. They do have field nurse aides out and physicians who are checking in with the workers, making sure the workers are healthy and taking their breaks. And they do offer personal protective equipment such as goggles, hats, gloves, shin guards, and boots. So just a little bit about a study that we did a couple of years ago, which we called a hydration intervention. So the initial questions that we had based on the current hypotheses was, is it dehydration? Can we improve the hydration among these sugarcane workers? And if we can do that, does kidney injury still occur when the workers are hydrated? And if yes, so if injury is still occurring, these workers are hydrated, what are the other risk factors for kidney injury? So going into the study, our objectives were to implement an intervention, which includes a wellness incentive and enhanced education on heat stress and hydration. And then we would evaluate changes in kidney function across the whole 6-month season and across the 10-hour work shift. So we would have chronic kidney changes and then acute kidney changes. And then investigate associations between daily kidney injury and heat, hydration, and other risk factors, such as NSAID use, smoking, alcohol intake. So those were our objectives. For the study, we utilized the pre-employment screening data. So every year, like I said, Pantaleon has a pre-employment screening where they take a survey, medical exam, and then they take your creatinine, which is a measure of kidney function. So that was done in November at the start of the harvest. And then our study team came in at 3 time points So February, March, and April, and we did a medical exam before the work shift at 5 a.m. We did a dipstick urinalysis, and we took their creatinine to measure their kidney function before the work shift. And then after the work shift, so 10 hours later, we did the same thing. And then we did a survey about their 24-hour recall. What were you doing in these 24 hours? And we did that at 3 time point with 500 workers. And like I said, we had a wellness incentive. It was part of our hydration intervention. So we increased education, where we passed out pamphlets. We had urine color charts to assess if they were dehydrated or not based on the color of the urine. We talked about heat stress symptoms and why it's important to stay hydrated through drinking water and electrolytes. And then we also had an incentive where we gave the workers a token if they came in the morning before their work shift, if they were hydrated when they came in the morning. And then if they maintained that hydration level, they got a second token. And then we did prize raffles with the tokens at the end of the study day. And the workers really liked that. So we had prizes like toothbrush, soccer balls, and that was just a lot of fun for the workers. I'm just gonna touch on a couple of results from the study. So, I mean, like I said, it's really hot down in Guatemala. So here's a figure. So I have the average and the maximum wet bulb flow temperature for each study day. So we had 24 study days. So on the x-axis are the study days. And then we have wet bulb flow temperature, which is a measure of like how hot it feels. Like it's an equation that brings in humidity, radiation, wind speed, temperature, and just it's a measure of how hot it feels. And this red dotted line is the US OSHA heat exposure threshold. So if it goes above 30, or at 30, I mean, at 30, workers should only be working 15 minutes each hour. So, I mean, you really can't use the guidelines of OSHA for these workers because the whole day is too hot. So that was pretty shocking. And I know we've had conversations with Pantaleon about how hot is too hot, and we don't really have an answer for that because it's just a different dynamic in Latin America than it is here. It's just a lot hotter, a lot more humid. And then so here, the first part of this slide is showing the research findings. Just very briefly, the workers were very well hydrated, but they had low serum electrolytes. They had low potassium, low sodium, and there was a high incidence of cross-shift acute kidney injury. So at least every study day, there was at least 50%, at least half of the workers had kidney injury. But we did find that water and electrolytes were both protective against AKI, acute kidney injury, but other factors do appear to contribute. And one of the findings was that if you were dehydrated and you used an NSAID, you were more at risk of having kidney injury. So we took these findings and we worked with Pantaleon to come up with some recommendations and what we could do with these findings. So Pantaleon, they implemented a mid-harvest kidney surveillance program. So at the middle of the harvest, they go out and they test the kidney function of the workers to make sure no one's declining rapidly or no one's at CKDU yet. And they've also implemented an electrolyte intervention trial where we're looking at what was the optimal amount of electrolytes you should be drinking during the work shift. And with those findings, we found that they should be drinking between 5 and 10 liters of electrolytes. So we worked with Pantaleon to implement this new hydration program for all the field workers, that they should be drinking between 5 and 10 liters of electrolytes. And then we even went to Nicaragua and Mexico to their meals, and we evaluated their hydration programs. And we're trying to decide how many liters of electrolytes they should be drinking in these meals in Nicaragua and Mexico. So I'm going to talk about another study. We were looking at environmental exposure. So we did an assessment last year where we went in and we tested the drinking water both at the work site and at the home of the workers. We were testing for nephrotoxic heavy metals and agrochemical levels. And we found that all the heavy metals, so we looked at lead, uranium, arsenic, cadmium, I think that's all we looked at. And then we looked at 2,4-D and glyphosate. We found that all the levels were below US EPA and WHO water standards. And then with the urine, we took 83 urine samples from the field workers, and we found that arsenic, nickel, cadmium, and lead were detected in the majority of the samples. And concentrations of arsenic, cadmium, lead, and uranium were higher than a random sample of Mexican Americans from the US NHANES study. And that glyphosate was detectable in 50% of the samples. So the key take-home findings here were we're not finding high levels in the water, but we are in the urine. So drinking water may not be the main source of metal and glyphosate exposure. And what are other possible sources of exposure? Which led us to do a pilot assessment of the air quality.
Because sugarcane is often burned before it is harvested, right before it's harvested. So you'll have the sugarcane workers working in the neighboring field while they're burning the field that they're gonna cut the next day. So there's black clouds coming out from the burn, and the workers are covered in black soot and ash. So it's all over the place, which it's kind of disturbing. So we decided to look at the air quality. Pilot air assessment, we had study staff wear personal air samplers in the breathing zone, and they walked around the sugarcane fields for 2 days to determine what was the PM, the particulate matter levels, and then we also analyzed for metals and glyphosate, and silica also. We had a feeling, because silica is naturally occurring in the soil. And we did find that amorphous silica accounted for 17% of the mass in the samples. And we did find trace amounts of crystalline silica in the samples, which is a nephrotoxin and known to hurt the kidneys. So we did put in a large grant with NIH to further look at the air quality. And we're also currently wanting to do research. We put in several grants to look at community risk factors and also do a more in-depth study of the environmental risk factors. And so I just wanted to touch on some other stuff we're doing with the sugarcane company in Pantaleon. So the approach is really to integrate work-related safety with the promotion of overall health and wellness. So the initial focus was on kidney disease, but now we're working with the company to do active kidney health surveillance, to conduct hydration programs. We've also done a nutrition assessment to determine if they are even getting enough calories during the day, because we know they eat on average 30 tortillas. So they might not be getting enough protein during the day. So we've worked with Pantaleon to modify their meal plan for the workers. We've also done hearing conservation and noise mitigation in the mill itself, where they're processing the sugar from the sugarcane. It's really hot and loud in these mills. And also we're working on a smoking cessation program with the company, also doing injury and illness surveillance. And then this last year we conducted several total worker health leadership trainings to assess the safety and health culture within the whole organization. And we did that in Guatemala, Nicaragua, and in Mexico. So that was a huge undertaking. So this is all the stuff that we've been working on the last several years. So it's not just kidney disease, but it's the whole worker health approach. This is just a list of disclosures and fundings for our research. We are we have an MOU with Pantaleon, so I get some of my salary from Pantaleon, some from some grants, but just wanted to disclose all the funding sources. And just a list of acknowledgements. It's a whole team that we have working here, and with the Pantaleon, our field staff, and then the staff here at University of Colorado.